And we're live. So, hi, welcome to another episode of Coaching Conversation. I am Todd Cargus, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Sonali Makanji. Hi, Sonali. Sonali is an emotional fitness coach, and I'm going to take the banner off mostly because I want everyone to see your shirt, Sonali. It says emotionally fit. And I love that. I love that. I'm Todd Cargus, as you know, executive and leadership development coach, and I'm really excited to have this conversation today. So why don't we kick it off? Sonali, what's emotional fit? Like, what even is emotional fitness? What is
exactly? What the heck is emotional fitness? Sounds like a buzzword, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's the point, right? That people don't understand what emotional fitness is. They see like emotional intelligence and all these big like buzzwords and can't distill what it means. So I want to introduce this as like a skill set. And the way that I want to think about it is when we go to the gym, you know, we're doing weightlifting, we might have a personal trainer. Why are we doing these things? To make our body physically fit to be able to do the things that we love and enjoy. Why do we try to time our waking and sleeping hours to the circadian rhythm? So that our body feels good, we feel alive and energetic when we wake up. You know, we've been told to eat our 5 a day, eat our fruit and vegetables, again, to keep our body physically fit. And like in recent years, what's really great is this idea of our mental health, right? Looking after our mental health has become more mainstream. And I want to introduce 2 more dimensions to the body, right? So we've talked about the physical dimension of our body, and we've talked about the cognitive or mental dimension to our body. But what about our emotional health or our emotional fitness? How do we look after that? And I guess a 4th dimension, which we're not talking about today, is our spiritual health, right? When we are connected to something bigger than ourselves. So emotional fitness there are lots of traits to emotional fitness, okay? For example, our self-awareness. How do we build a muscle for self-awareness? Our mindfulness. How much are we in the present, or how much of our time are we trying to distract ourselves or, you know, manifest something to avoid actually doing it, and all these things. So, and, you know, we can discuss some of those traits. And one of my favorite traits that I bucket under emotional fitness is our ability to emotionally regulate. And I call it fitness as opposed to health, because it's a muscle we want to develop, right? It's like, think of it as like preventative as opposed to you needing to go to the doctor. It's how can we practice some of these skills and build some of these muscles in low stakes environments before something happens and, you know, we need to go to the doctor or we need to see a therapist or, you know, do some of the deeper work to heal us. It's not healing. It's the fitness aspect.
That's fascinating. It's not healing. It's preventative, right? Yeah, it's preventative medicine, right? I like that. I like that a lot. You mentioned 2 things that I kind of glommed onto, and if they're not where we want to go, then you tell us. But you know, you mentioned presence and you mentioned mindfulness, and of course the 2 are really, really connected in that way. And I'm going to tell you, this is not my area of expertise by a long shot. I am just starting to get into a practice of mindfulness and really thinking about presence, and I suppose really thinking about emotional fitness too. And I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about sort of what shows up. I guess maybe what I'm really curious about is what shows up in your practice. Like what do people struggle with the most? Like how is this going to help someone?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it, right? There's some traits of emotional fitness that some of us might be okay at, or we might have practiced it, right? And especially in the workplace, like I know this conversation is about emotional fitness in leadership. In the workplace, we might be good at empathy, for example, especially if we're a team leader. We might have practiced understanding, you know, how our colleague might feel, you know, being human first. You know, really listening rather than just the easy route of advising and telling someone what to do, you know, really trying to help that person grow into their skill set. We might also have practiced proactive communication. So, our ability to have difficult conversations, or, understanding how to receive feedback, how to give feedback. Again, we might have practiced that, but one of the things we might not have practiced as much, or we might not have had the opportunity to practice as much, and I know for me it was something that I really had to work on, was my ability to practice presence, because it's so tied into being able to emotionally regulate ourselves, right? We are almost, well, I don't know about you, but for me, I've always been taught, like, to give someone the benefit of the doubt, to, if you're feeling something negative, almost to try and turn it into a positive. Forgive and forget, all the good moral things that we're taught. But sometimes what happens is that you end up bypassing emotions, right? And you think you've let them go because you have distracted yourself. You've gone to that yoga class, you have, I don't know, gone to see a movie, you've like picked up your phone and just, vented it out to your friend, but you actually haven't let go of that scenario in your mind. It keeps playing in your mind. And emotional regulation is being able to feel your feelings. And I don't mean that in like, oh my gosh, like, listen to that really upsetting soundtrack and really go into it and wallow in it. I mean, are you able to correctly label the emotion so that you understand why it's occurring, and you're not just stuck as, oh, I don't feel good. Okay, you don't feel good. Where do you not feel good? Whether that's in your body, or can you expand that feeling of discomfort to the container of your body, which is very large, so it doesn't dysregulate you in the same way? Because the more you avoid it, it's going to burst at some point. You might be in a board meeting and erupt in anger or frustration about something that happened in the morning because it's triggered you, right? So you're laughing.
It's like you're reading my biography.
These things happen. So how do we correctly label an emotion with nuance? You could say, I'm feeling bad, but when you feel bad, is it that you're feeling tired? Is it that you're feeling overwhelmed? Is it that you're feeling worried? What is the emotion, and what is the nuance of that emotion? Because once you have a vocabulary for it, you can, name it to tame it. You begin to understand what it is, why you're feeling it, and get the wisdom from it. That's maybe, I hope that's not too complicated.
No, not at all. Well, and what's coming up for me when you mention that, Sonali, is that, like, I know leaders, and I myself have been a leader who has said things like, these emotions are getting my way. I need to do this and this and this and this. Like, here are the things that I need to deliver. Here are the things that I need to do. This emotional stuff is just a distraction. I'm going to put it on the shelf and I'm going to feel it tomorrow or next week.
Yeah.
And the thing is, of course, you never get back to it. You never feel it next week or tomorrow or whatever, right? Because that's not present. That's not when it's happening. That's not actually useful.
Yeah,
And I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's not easy to sort of feel it immediately all the time, and it's important to allow that to be, like, to allow it to be without judgment, without shame, without whatever, right? We're all emotional beings. We all need sort of the space in which to operate emotionally.
Yeah, safe space.
And whether we like it or not, we bring all of our emotions to work with us.
Exactly. And, you touched on a good thing, which is we're so used to, like, emotions are a data point, right? I'm not saying act on all your emotions. We'd all become animals if we did that. It's a data point. And exactly like you said, we're like, we'll deal with this later. I need to get the job done. But when you're saying I'll deal with it later, where is it going? Your container is your body and it's your mind. You can't take it outside and put it on the desk, or leave it in your house and then go about your day. So when you're putting it aside, you've got to think of it as you're collecting it in your body. And the ancient Indian sciences, and now Western sciences also caught up with it, and Gabor Mate speaks about this a lot. So does Peter Levine. So do some of these amazing therapists, which is now a lot of chronic conditions are appearing because of suppressed emotions. It's been found to have its root in emotion. So emotional regulation is not just good for our performance or our relationships. It's actually key for our physical health. And yes, you need to have a time, a safe place, whether it's with your coach, whether it's with your therapist, whatever modality you choose, to be able to process that emotion and really understand the nuance of it. Because then you don't have to bypass it. You can let it go. You almost like go through it, and then it no longer matters. It's no longer at the back of your mind. Go on, you're about to say something.
Yeah, no, there's so I have a rich and long history of suppressing emotions. And well, I say it with a laugh because if I don't laugh, I'll cry. But I what you're describing, that crescendo that just sort of bubbles up and bubbles up and bubbles up until you don't have a choice. I mean, what in my own case, it resulted in my particular burnout story, which I've told before to folks here and others. But in a nutshell, it just I didn't know what I was feeling, and it became so much that I couldn't help but feel it. It was like my body kind of didn't give me the choice of suppressing any longer, and it all came out all at once. It was sort of like
you got a physical symptom. The emotional
oh my God, absolutely. Yeah, I was sick. I was sick for a while, and I wouldn't have necessarily classified it as emotional. And at the same time, now that I can sort of look at it from the rearview mirror, it clearly was. And it's interesting because the best analogy that I think I have is, this is I'm going to reveal something about myself that maybe a lot of folks don't know, but when I was younger, I was a smoker. And I smoked, like a pack a day. And it wasn't until about 6 months after I quit that I realized, I had just been sick for a really long time, because it took that long for my body to realize that I was healing. And this is actually what I'm supposed to feel like. This is what it's supposed to be like. And being able to sort of take a step away and give myself the space to feel what's coming up and what the emotions are, was what I needed. I'm going to pause for just half a second because I'm getting some notes over on LinkedIn, and I wonder if we might be having some technical difficulty. So if anyone is here and listening and can hear us, please, we'd love to hear you on the chat. I am just checking right now, though, because I did get a note from someone saying that there might be a challenge. And if there is, then we'll probably have to deal with this being the recording. But that's okay, because even if folks can't see us live, they will be able to see us afterwards. I'm going to leave it at that for now. What about you? What made you interested in all of this?
I want to say thanks for sharing that, by the way. And I think it's so common. We only tune up when we get a physical symptom. And I think that's part of this message. Don't wait for the symptom to appear. Let's work on keeping fit and practicing things in low stakes and small stakes environments, so we get used to the practice, right? I think what really got me interested in this is I like to think of things really holistically. And I know now maybe that trend is increasing, but I had a similar story, right? All of our mental well-being, our physical well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, it's all one person well-being. They're not separate parts of ourselves. We are one person, and we have these dimensions. And I think what I realized is even the nuance of our nutrition, what we feed our body, does have an impact on how we turn up at work, the energy that we might have in a class. I know, for example, when I'm going for the biscuits, I'm probably under some sort of level of stress, right? That's my trigger. Oh, I think you might have frozen, Todd.
No, I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
And I think that I think I've solved the LinkedIn live challenge. So I apologize. LinkedIn Live is joining us midway through this conversation.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay. So what were we talking about? We were just talking about emotional fitness being one of the dimensions of our overall health and well-being and performance, and how the other elements, they interact with each other. So when we are, and I guess another idea here, maybe to simplify it, is the stories that we tell ourselves, they're going to impact how we think, how we feel, how we behave. They're going to impact our well-being. So if I am constantly going for the biscuits, and then I am aware that I tend to go for the biscuits when I'm really stressed and I'm burning out and probably I just need a break, it allows me to understand why I'm acting that way. So your data points can be, if you're not as in touch with your emotions or haven't, got used to that capacity, because we're not really taught that, right? There could be other triggers in your day-to-day life, whether it's your sleep, whether it's your nutrition. I think we've got a comment from someone.
We do. Thanks, Deborah. This is live, Deborah. Thank you. And there was a challenge with LinkedIn, so there is a recording which I'll post to YouTube when we're finished.
Yeah. And Deb, if there's anything that you've missed that you want us to mention or recap on, let us know, and we can maybe do that.
For sure.
But anyway, Todd, tell me about you. What part of emotional fitness, or some of the traits that we discussed, do you feel you're, well versed in, and ones that you want to dive deeper into?
Well, so it's so interesting because I think for me, the journey to emotional fitness, particularly as you discussed at the beginning, within presence and mindfulness, has been fascinating to me, and I also was resistant to it, which maybe isn't surprising. Like even after I blew up, even after the burnout session, I still really needed some science behind it, and for me, it showed up as sort of an explosion of anxiety. Like that was really what it was. Like it was realizing that I had been living for decades with sort of increasing anxiety. And there's an author named Judson Brewer who wrote a book called Unwinding Anxiety, and he's a clinical psychiatrist who has a practice where he treats anxiety in the same way that he does addictions. And so he's like a nerdy neuroscientist, and I read the thing, and it was like nerdy neuroscience, and that was helpful to me because like, oh, okay, this is real. But in it, he referenced Tara Brach's work, specifically around radical compassion and rain meditation. So when I think of what you're describing now, it's not so much about understanding the emotion as just recognizing it and letting it be there. Like there's something magical about recognizing it and letting it be there without having to evaluate it or judge myself or feel shame for it, or even if it is shame or whatever. Like there's just something about, here's this thing that I'm feeling and it's allowed to be here.
I love that. It's like acceptance, like you call it radical compassion, and radical acceptance. And that is such a difficult practice, right? And it's so much easier sometimes to do it for others than to do it for ourselves.
And that's the thing and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's the thing that really kind of lit me up when you were talking, because, within the context of leadership, and I work with lots and lots of leaders who are like, oh yeah, I understand empathy. I know how to be empathetic to my team. I know how to be helpful within that context. And I did too. But the thing is when something got difficult, when something became, problematic, I became a different person.
Yeah. You got triggered.
And how I showed up emotionally in those moments was very different. And the way that the thing that I came to realize was, if it felt like an attack on my identity, then I would respond very, very differently than if I could be removed from it. And I think a lot of leaders sort of, operate within this context, it's like, oh, it's easy for me to show up for the team and to defend the team against, even the most terrible, terrible things. But I can't do the same for myself because it's too close. So I take it personally. It's too much part of me. And whatever story I'm telling myself about who I am and what I'm capable of. And the thing is that's just a story, isn't it?
Exactly. We come back to the narrative, right? And the awareness of the narrative. Because once you're aware of it, you can practice creating that distance. So you're not reacting and you're responding. We all have narratives. Some of them are easier to overcome. Some of them are more deep-rooted to overcome. But like the first step is that awareness. How are you going to build that awareness? Because you can't really build it in the echo chamber of your own mind. You're going to convince yourself of everything, right? You're going to say, this is my belief. This is my value. Where did that value and that belief come from? And is it helping you? Is it not helping you? And in which situations is it serving you? And like with what you said, when we're under stress, the darker side of ourselves comes out, with everyone. And when we're more regulated, the brighter side comes out. And most of us, we want to work on that weakness of the darker side, when is that? And making sure, okay, are we at least aware of it? So I have a technique or a tool or an awareness of when I need to step back, when I need to be the bystander, when I need a minute. But we never do that. We just wait until we almost explode, because we are all going to explode. And explosions look different for other people. It doesn't mean anger or shouting and screaming. It can also be withdrawing or hiding, or fear of being judged, whatever it might be. But I think it's important for us all to know that behavior and how we show up, what we do.
And I think the thing that's I love what you're saying, and I think the thing that I'd love to add to it is, I spent probably the better part of a year in full-on threat response, in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and for me, like my two go-tos were usually fight and freeze, and I think the thing that made it possible was like, oh, wait a minute, is that what I'm doing? Is that actually what I'm doing? And again, I keep saying this, but it's like, I guess the big question that I would have if you find yourself in that space, or you think you find yourself in that space, is what do you need just to make a little bit more room for yourself? Like just a little bit, because the thing is if you can make just a little bit more room for yourself, if I had made just a little bit more room for myself, years before it all blew up, maybe I would have done it differently. Actually, I'm certain I would have done it differently. And really, that's what I want. That's what I want for leaders who struggle in this, because it's so common. It's so common.
Yeah, and
which is why what you're doing is so important. It's so important, Sonali.
It's also so fun because, based on just listening to what you said, that space, it's really hard to do it in the moment when you're in like a high threat, high stakes environment. It's practice. Like you have to practice, and you just how you would like if you're trying to learn tennis, you're going to get a coach. You're going to make sure you get tennis shoes. I learned this lesson. So you don't sprain your ankle. Like, you have to work on your breath. You have to work on your running. Same with this, like having emotional responses or being under emotional stress or stress in general, you need to practice expanding that container. So I think one of the best tools I've learned is from Dr. Raja Selvam. It's called Integral Somatic Psychology. For me, learning this skill set was a game changer. And, you can look at his work. It's called Embodying Emotions. And we are so cognitive driven, right? We try to understand and think through emotions, like anything we can possibly do to not feel them. And, I'm just understanding the value. I must Google what this definition actually means, even though we know it intuitively. And a lot of the work he does is, somatic work. It's through the body. It doesn't really require so much cognition. It's almost like the non-verbal communication, the sigh, the grinding of the teeth, the clenching, the non-verbal communications that perhaps we used as children, right? When we didn't have the words, but we were still able to communicate our emotion to our caregiver. And the work that he does, and I'm simplifying it, but he allows you to access the nuance of your emotion and understand where it sits in your body, and to be able to spread it to different parts of your body, so you recognize that little emotion. Let's say it's fear. It might be stuck in a really small part of your chest, and because it's so acute, it can feel really pressurizing and really suffocating because it's stuck in this tiny little box. However, there is a technique which we call ISP, where you can, with intention, spread that discomfort to more parts of your body. Okay. And when you do that, it's almost like diluting the emotion. You're still very aware of it, but you recognize it's a data point. It can expand, it can change, and it can be tolerable, right? Why do we go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn? I'm not a psychologist, but I'm telling you the layperson of what I understand is because it's overwhelming for our body. Our body feels it's under threat. When we build our ability to tolerate that discomfort or those emotions that feel so overwhelming to us, we're not going to go into that response as quickly the next time, because we've built the capacity, we've built the muscle, we've built the fitness of that emotion or that response.
So it doesn't remove it. It simply makes it more more possible to be with. It's crying into the ocean.
Yeah, and what you notice when you go through this practice or you experience it is that it changes. It's possible for some parts of your body to feel really comfortable when there's also discomfort there. There's no negative and positive. It just is. And once you almost like embrace it, you realize, oh, okay, this is not so, it can be overwhelming, but I can tolerate it. Like, even if you expand your body's huge. It's got a massive container, massive capacity. We don't need to lock it up in a really tiny little box and just hope it kind of, disintegrates.
Yeah. Wow. Sonali, I can't believe that we're almost at the end of our conversation.
I know.
But
we went everywhere today.
We did. Listen, if there was one thing that you'd want to leave with, what would it be?
Can I have two things?
You can have as many things as you like.
I think the first one is we really need to normalize emotional health and think of it as a fitness practice, and not wait until we need to go to the doctors. I think emotional fitness is a key pillar of our health and well-being, but it's also like a human skill that we need in the workplace. And the more healthier we are and the more aware we are, the better we're going to be as leaders and as teammates, whether it's in work or whether it's in life. And I guess the second one is this is such a big topic, and we really have just hit like not even a drop in the ocean. So I would love to discuss this with whoever's listening who wants to know more, and get people's ideas and views. And because I really want this to be a normal offering. I don't think it's just leaders. I think it's for every human being.
I agree. And if we think of leadership, what comes to me is that in the olden days, we used to call stuff like this soft skills. And exactly. I don't think there's anything soft about this at all.
It's human skills.
Exactly. This is human skills. Sonali, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Listen, and just to clarify, so we did have some technical difficulties, but the entirety of this recording will be available both on LinkedIn and on YouTube, and I'll post the links afterwards. But Sonali, if anyone listening wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can LinkedIn me, you can DM me. My website is also sonalimakanji.com. And don't hesitate. I would love to hear from you and see what you think.
Excellent.
And thank you, Todd. Excellent. It was great to chat.
It really was. Thank you. And I'm Todd Kargas. You can reach me on LinkedIn or at toddkargas.com. And this has been Emotional Fitness and Leadership with Sonali Makanji and me, Todd Kargas. Thank you so much, Sonali.
Okay, thanks. Bye, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.